One of my favorite modeling activities is the creation of sedimentary rock seams in my railroad landscape. I use broken pieces of suspended ceiling tiles to create a truly stunning scenery element. You can employ this technique to create thin seams sandwiched between carved metamorphic rock, or you can create massive cliffs dominating a scene. In this video, we'll work on a horizontal stretch of strata forming a cliff that is 1.5 inches in height. That's about 11 scale feet. We'll start by cutting 2-inch wide strips from a ceiling tile. We'll use a steel straight edge to guide the knife. I like to use one with a raised handle to keep my fingers away from the path of the knife. I can't stress this enough. It's so easy to slip with that knife and do some serious damage to your fingers. You might be tempted to use a narrow steel rule for this process. That's really not a good idea. You can't get your fingers far enough away from the knife. Next, we'll use light pressure to snap those strips off. Use 2 stamped steel wrenches or steel brackets and a slip joint pliers. Reset the jaws to the open position. Make sure the sharp edge of the stamped wrenches are against the tile. Position them and then snap a piece off. Do that again. The next pieces are going to be just a little bit wider. You'll see why in just a second. Again, position the 2 steel straps. Grab them with the pliers, a little bit of pressure, and you snap off a piece. Continue until you have a pile of tile pieces. Whatever you don't use on this project, you can use the next time you want to make a sedimentary strata. I now use a little block, could be a scrap block of wood, and a razor saw. Cut down through to make 2 pieces. We're now going to take our foam base, and if you're working on site on your railroad, you would just walk over to there and do it there. We'll use a generous amount of wood glue in an old brush. A flux brush is great for this. You'll want to bring your little block over. We're going to coat the first piece and place it against the vertical wall and the base. The glue in the back of the block and the bottom of the block will glue to the 2 surfaces. Now take the next piece, and if you're coming around an angle, you can use the razor saw to trim off the edge at a slight angle. This eliminates large vertical gaps at the front of the wall. I use the razor saw to make a slight indentation with pressure on the top instead of picking up a pencil and putting it down constantly. Glue this next block, bottom and back. Place that in. Continue along as though you're building a block wall. At points where the wall has a small radius, you can just cut a shorter piece. This allows you to follow the curvature of the wall more closely. You don't have to be perfectly precise. What we're going to do is to continue putting pieces on and using quite a bit of glue. If it overflows as you go, you can just brush it out. The pieces will vary in depth. That adds extra texture to the rock face. Just avoid large overhangs that are obvious. As we start the next layer, we'll stagger the vertical joints. just like you would if you were building a brick wall. As in a cooking show, I show you the wall with all the blocks complete. You want to go back and press the blocks carefully against the base foam. You can also break off some small pieces and add them as extensions along the base of the rock strata. This adds a little bit more realism. Quite often, rock will fracture and fall to the base of a cliff. We'll add more glue along the top seam of the tiles and foam, and along the base of the tiles. That glue will soak through everything and form a monolithic structure. At this point, you'll see that there may be some protruding edges on the foam blocks. Use the needle nose pliers to break them off. Now take a little bit of drywall compound to fill in any really large gaps between the tiles. You don't have to cover every gap. An actual rock strata will have cracks at places. Use an old brush to smooth out the compound. Next, we'll use small amounts of burnt umber, gray, and raw sienna, and lots of water to apply a wash over the tiles. If it gets too dark in areas, you can always wash it out with some water, or use a small wire brush and just scrape the surface slightly, and that'll pull the color off. I used a small putty knife to smooth the top surface above the strata and the surface at the base. Next, we're going to make a mixture of 50-50 water and glue. We'll use this to wash the entire face of the strata. This seals and hardens the rough surface. This is very important to create a lasting rock structure that's not going to deteriorate. Next, we'll coat the horizontal surfaces with wood glue. And don't forget the small ledges that occur on the face of the cliff. We'll use colored ballast. I like to use a red oxide. And then some green ground foam. Be generous with the amount. You can brush or spread it out afterwards. Be careful not to get your brush or spreader down into the glue. Use a piece of foam to tamp the coverings. That sets the coverings into the glue. You can then shake off the excess into the box lid and repeat the process. If you're working on site on your railroad, instead of shaking off into the box, you can use a small hand vacuum with an empty collection chamber to pick up the excess foam. You'll then have it available for a future project. Your final rock strata should look like this.